to Perth Watch. Today I want to compare one of the new Seiko 5 sports models to the original SKX that I have. So I reviewed recently the SRPD 55, which I think is the one that is closest in appearance to the SKX 007, and I think clearly it is actually the style successor of the SKX line. I did highlight some of the differences in the review which I did recently, but today I want to put them head to head using my usual scoring system. So let's just flip the camera around and get straight into it.
Alright guys, so here we are on the table with my scoring system here. So again, the one on the left, the older model SKX 007, I think needs very little in the way of introduction. One of the earliest reviews I did on the channel and has featured in multiple other videos. And then the one on the right, identical in size, is the newer model SRPD 55, which I alluded to already. So, what are the similarities between these models? Well, look, I think I've mentioned before that they do have identical dimensions. So 42.5 millimeter case, 13 millimeter thickness, 46 millimeter lug to lug distance. So pretty much identical on all counts there, but obviously differences in the dial presentation as well as the bezel that you can see there. The finishing in terms of the polish and brush finishes are the same throughout the case. 316L steel on both, of course, with both having a very similar feeling 120 click unidirectional dive style bezel, right? Both having Hardlex crystal aluminium bezel inserts, and they both still have LumiBrite. Very pleased that the new one performs just as well as the old one in terms of the LumiBrite shear maintenance over a whole night. The screw-in case back on the new one, of course, is no longer a solid one. It is actually a see-through display case back, whereas the old one, as you guys will probably know, is a solid one with the Tsunami logo for Seiko dive watches. Okay, so these are the similarities. What are the differences? Well, the new one has the upgraded movement for R36. The dial appointments are upgraded in the newer watch, right? It does have applied indices and elements there. And the bracelet, I think, is, obviously stylistically is different, and we'll go into the more detailed differences in the comparison here. Dive credentials, right? This one is an ISO 6425 diver. This one, they've removed the back. In terms of being displayed back now, they've removed the solid screw down crown. It's no longer a screw down crown. It winds in the zero position here. And of course the bezel is quite different, meaning it only has the minute markings in the 20 over on the first 120 degrees there, and it doesn't have a lume pip. MSRP wise, I believe the original was actually 450, right? But nobody ever paid that, as far as I know. They were kind of going for closer to around the 200 USD mark, whereas this one, the MSRP is 295, and currently you don't find this on very much discount at all. The best price I could find on a recent search, in fact, was 260. I'll put product links down the bottom, of course. Okay, so let's get into the comparison here. Caliber wise, first up, okay, so we were talking about the old 7S26 versus the 4R36. I think you have to give the mark to the new one. The newer model has hacking, hand winding, and also a higher jewel count, right? So 24 versus 21. I think there's no doubt it is a upgraded movement. It's got more functionality, so I'm going to give the mark to the newer one. No doubt the 7S26 is bulletproof, lots of reliability, but the newer model is starting to have its own track record of reliability over more than 10 years now. Okay, next up, case and bezel. Okay, so all but identical casings, as I alluded to before in terms of sizing and finishing. The newer model, of course, gives that display case back, which, in a dive watch is really unnecessary. And for a 4R36, who really needs to look at that? It's not really that pretty a movement, and they didn't really decorate it much either. The newer model does have jewel lugs, okay, whereas the older one did not, so that's an improvement in my opinion. But that simpler bezel, lack of 60-minute markings, lack of bezel pip is a step backwards. So I think they kind of come up on par. I've given them 8 out of 10 on both because they both have slight strengths and weaknesses over the other. So that's my specific opinion about the case and bezel here. Okay, dial and crystal. The crystal I'm not going to comment much about because they're both hard legs in essentially identical configurations here, right? There's a slight distortion on the side, right? You can see that right at the edge there's a bit of a step or box, and they give you some nice features there as you look at the dial, and it's pretty much the same with the new one. It's not different, right? So the Hardlex crystal is the same mark on this one for me, but the newer dial, dial wise there's differences. Newer dial pops more, right? It has those applied indices which are polished, and I think, to be honest, I have to say the newer one does pop in the hand more. I think that automatic at the 6 o'clock position is pretty tastefully done, even though I'd rather the Diver's 200-meter dive performance any day. But they've taken that from other classic automatic watches in their range, and it's pretty well done. So I'm going to give the dial mark to the SRPD 55 because it does have those improvements there. Okay, bracelet wise, the next category down, right? Just move that to show you the marks. Bracelet wise, the original SKX Jubilee was a bit of a shocker, right? Some models had folded metal links. This one doesn't. I've actually replaced that from another Kinetic Diver, which is identical in terms of configuration. So this is slightly more solid, but you can see some of these elements here are still kind of folded metal, kind of hollow. It does have those hollow end links and press metal clasps there with push button release, right, and a keeper there. So those elements are identical in the new ones in terms of the press metal keeper as well as the hollow end links. But I think the new one is just a little bit more solid. It certainly weighs more. It's still push pin release, but in terms of the just the solidity of the bracelet is just a little bit better. So in my opinion, the bracelet is not fantastic, but I think I have to give the slight edge here to the newer model, right? 5 versus 6 is the bracelet mark today. Okay, next up, quality. Right, 8 out of 10 for both of these. Same as you might expect because they're really from the same company, right? The same quality, fit and finish, right? They both have chapter ring and bezel alignment issues, which are a little bit of a bugbear of Seiko divers. That's nothing new. This one does still have those issues, unfortunately and disappointingly. But you could argue the newer one maybe deserves a half mark more because it just has a slightly better dial and bracelet. But I've chosen to give them both 8 out of 10 today. Okay, next up, style. Okay, 8 out of 10 as well for both of them. I think obviously this is subjective. I think the aesthetics have come through intact, right, in terms of the new one inheriting, the classic utilitarian good looks of the old SKX. So, to me, these are not separable. I've given them 8 out of 10 for style because I think they both kind of really have the same good looks, and certainly I've started to get comments on the new watch as well. Okay, next up, performance. All right, so this is where the newer model kind of falls down a bit. They've kind of decreased the water resistant rating to 100 meters, where it was actually a Diver's 200 meters in the old one. The bezel does not have a lume. Yes, you can of course swap that out, but I'm going to mark this on what you're getting out of the store. The SKX ISO 6425 dive credentials, of course. So I think performance-wise, no doubt, you have to give the mark to the old model because these are ostensibly tool divers, and in terms of sheer performance, the old one definitely wins out here in my book. 9 versus 7. Whether you give a 1 mark spread or 2 mark spread, you can argue about that, but I think I have to give it to the old one. Durability. Okay. Materials are all the same, right? It's 3160 steel, it's mineral crystal, it's aluminium bezel inserts, right? They're really identical in that way. The new model is about 10 grams heavier, and I think most of that is in the bracelet. So you're getting slightly more material here, but you're getting that slight weakness in terms of a display case back, which some people really think is a weakness when it comes to a dive style watch. It's a compromise in the case integrity. So I think they kind of like even out here. I've given 7 out of 10 in terms of the durability mark to these watches today. All right, nearly there, guys. Value. Okay, so the newer model does give you the upgraded movement, right? It's the 4R36, which I think is an upgrade on the 7S series. It's got that upgraded dial with the applied markers, which I've discussed in detail. It does give you drilled lugs, but it is more expensive. Right now, you have to pay more to get the newer model compared to what you used to have to pay for the SKX. The older model does give you the Divers 200 meter features for a lower cost. So I'm going to give the value proposition mark to the old SKX 007, which was really one of the reasons why this was so popular, because it offered all that in a relatively low cost package. So value mark today for me, 8 versus 7. All right, guys, last one, brand, which is not a factor, right? I've given 8 out of 10 for Seiko for nearly all the comparisons I do, and it's 8 out of 10 for both, not really a factor here. What is the conclusion? As you followed along, you might have added it up, and it actually ends up the same mark, which I think some of you may probably find a bit controversial. So let me just summarize the findings for all of us here. So they have the same case design, same quality, same style mark. I feel the durability comes up on par, and I didn't really give a different mark for the brand because it's not really relevant. The newer model, I think, gives a caliber update, so you have to give the win to the 4R36. And objectively, I think it gave a more elaborate dial with those applied indices, and I think also a slightly better bracelet. The older model, I think, pulls it back on some of the marks in terms of the Divers 200 meter performance, ISO compliant performance, and also a fantastic value proposition when it was in running production. So based on this particular scoring system, being as objective as I possibly can, I think these pieces for me come up on par because of different strengths and weaknesses. I think it just goes to show the limitations of any scoring system. Emotionally, I think the SKX will always be considered the legendary original, and probably would have pulled ahead if I had a category like an X Factor or something similar. All right, so guys, there it is. There's my scores on these two watches. Let's just flip the camera around for the wrap up.
There you go, guys. My head-to-head comparison of the new Seiko 5 sports model against the old SKX 007. Let me know what you think. Do you think I got it right? Do you disagree with any of the areas where I scored them? Do you think the old one is better than the new one? Or maybe you think the new one is better? Or do you think their pros and cons kind of weigh out to be roughly the same? Would love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Guys, if you like my videos, do consider subscribing. I put out new content every week, always aiming to be objective and unbiased about all things horology. Thank you again for sticking with me, and as always, I'll catch you guys next time.